So your impressions of the World Economic Forum on Africa so far?
Very interesting. A lot of huge potential to come out of this event. I've met with a lot of CEOs of different companies. So I'm excited at the possibilities that we can have here.
A lot of CEOs of different companies. Are you trying to attract them into Nigeria and more specifically to list on the NEC? Because there have been a lot of problems in Nigeria. We know of the market crash over 2 years ago. We know of declining valuations of Nigerian companies. We know of investors being reticent to bring their money into Nigeria. How are you going to try to really improve on the profile of the country?
With the recently concluded, successfully concluded elections, we're very excited that we can at least remove some of the political risk that companies consider. My goal of coming to a Nigerian Stock Exchange is definitely to attract more companies, introduce more products, and make our operational efficiency world-class. And so a lot of the CEOs that I'm meeting today and for the rest of the week, I'll be explaining to them the benefits of coming to access Nigerian capital markets.
What are some of those benefits? For instance, we do know the economy is set to grow at above 7% and that the returns are very attractive.
Right. So if you look at global fund movements, there's been a lot of capital flows from out of experienced developed economies to frontier and emerging markets. Given where Nigeria is today, we do believe that a lot of those flows should be coming to Nigeria. And as we improve the efficiencies of trading in Nigeria and listing in Nigeria, we should it should grow on itself.
I mean, that issue is something that quite prominent Nigerians like the governor of the CBN have spoken about. For instance, when we saw the launch, albeit a very small denominated paper of the Nigerian sovereign bond internationally, there were lots of concerns in Nigeria as to the pricing of that debt. And there was a sense that it's going to impact on the pricing of a lot of other Nigerian assets, and it wasn't a fair indication of what Nigerian assets are really worth. By your estimations, beyond the benefits of investing in Nigeria, what are Nigerian assets worth? Is it somewhere above the region of 7%?
It's given the economic growth rate, given what the individual companies are doing, you can see that there's a lot of growth opportunity that is not captured in the interest rate for that bond. So I tend to agree with people, but then we're also looking to establish a benchmark from which to get better. So things can only get better from that particular benchmark.
Obviously, a big issue beyond Nigeria is deepening capital markets in general in Africa, trying to get local investors to invest in their local stock exchange, trying to get ordinary people like myself, retail investors, to be active in stock trades. It's an issue of education, certainly in my case, but it's also an issue of reticence where local companies don't see the value.
There are drivers to making capital markets deep in Africa generally. Some of those success drivers would include introducing market makers to actually have a two-way bid and ask, introducing electronic trading to allow for more efficient transfer of securities. Those are just examples. There are so many other things. So I think as we begin to implement some of these things, we should see a lot more depth and liquidity in our marketplace. And I would believe that would be true for most of the African capital markets.
Governance is also a big issue. We know that you come in as part of a series of reforms to jack up the executive of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, a new board. It's supported by broader banking reforms because banks make up a large constituent of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. What are your immediate priorities?
My immediate priorities actually would include going around to the different stakeholders and talking with them, understanding how they think we can best tackle the problem. And then I believe charity starts at home. Yeah. So we're going to actually have to look inward, starting from the exchange, our corporate governance, our organizational structure, and then push that out once we're set to our listed companies and brokerage firms. So it's a process that we're going through. It's a huge transformational process. And we believe that at the end of that process, you should see very high corporate governance standards. You should see very efficient organizations that are very transparent in the way they release their financial statements, the way they run their corporation, and also investor education, the way we access capital and allow other participants to actually know exactly what is going on.
And just in terms of operational efficiencies and improving on governance, in other markets you're starting to hear them talk about demutualization and trying to put the stock exchange in private hands, being accountable to a more commercially cognizant investor and shareholder. Is that an option for the Nigerian Stock Exchange?
Yes, it is. As you know, the trend around the world is for exchanges to become demutualized, become for-profit organizations. They tend to run more efficiently. Access to capital becomes easier. You also have flexibility, whether it's equities or bonds or loans. So there are so many benefits to demutualizing. For us, we definitely want to do it the right way. So we're not rushing off right away to do it, but we are going to start the process very soon. That would take us down the road of demutualization.
Okay, and finally, in terms of product development, we know that this is an oil-producing country, Nigeria, and we have some petroleum stocks, the banks as the catalyst to credit growth and investment, so that's where we've seen a lot of activity. But they're saying, for instance, with agriculture coming to the fore as a driver of growth, with ICT as a driver of employment and innovation, we need to start seeing a lot more agricultural companies, manufacturers, agro-processors, and ICT companies coming onto the fore. For you, in terms of a sectoral focus, what would that be?
For us, I think the major drivers for the Nigerian capital markets would be oil and gas, telecom, where we have a huge presence right now, getting them to list on the floor and allowing Nigerian investors to access that capital pool and the profitability that comes from there. As you know, our president has also, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has also made power generation a key focus for his organization, for the country. So we'll be looking to tap into that, and if there is any way we can help with raising capital in the capital markets for power infrastructure and other kinds of infrastructure, we'll be right on it. As you know, agriculture accounts for about 40% of our GDP, so that is an area that you cannot ignore. We'll be working with the local entrepreneurs to see how we can bring them into the marketplace. As you know, we do have an emerging market sector that we call ASEM, that is really geared towards helping smaller entrepreneurial firms that do not qualify for the big board to list and then be groomed to get onto the senior market. So we'll be looking at all those options to help them raise capital.